They say silence is golden, but in the world of a grieving mother, it's a prison, especially when that mother is deaf and the child she longs to speak to is gone forever. Her grief was a silent scream in an already quiet world. Then, one ordinary day, three little girls walked up to her, and with their small hands they offered her the one thing she thought she had lost forever: a conversation. This is the true story of Maya, a woman navigating two kinds of silence: the silence of her deafness and the deeper, more crushing silence left after her baby son died. For months, she moved through the world in a bubble of solitary grief, until a chance encounter in a sunlit cafe with three little girls who knew her language. They saw her pain, reached out, and in doing so, set in motion events none of them could have foreseen. What happened next would reveal a hidden connection so profound. It would challenge everything Maya thought she knew about loss, family, and the whispers of fate. Maya's world had narrowed to a series of quiet, painful rituals. Every Tuesday, she would take the same bus downtown, sit at the same corner table in the Daily Grind cafe, and order the same tea she could no longer taste. The cafe was her chosen purgatory, a place with just enough ambient noise to feel connected to the living, but where no one expected her to speak. She was 32, a graphic designer who worked remotely and profoundly deaf since birth. But the silence she was born into was nothing compared to the void that opened 8 months ago, when her 4-month-old son, Leo, died suddenly in his sleep from an undiagnosed heart condition. Her marriage to David, a hearing man who had learned sign language for her, fractured under the weight of the loss. He grieved loudly, with tears and anger, while Maya's grief was an internal, soundless collapse. They separated amicably, a clinical word for a heart that had been cleaved in two. Now Maya lived alone in the apartment that still smelled in her memory of baby powder. She moved through her days with a careful, mechanical precision. She avoided the park, the pediatrician's office on the corner, and any friend who tried to fix her with words she had to strain to read on their lips. Words were useless. They were vibrations in the air that never reached the core of her pain. The Tuesday this story begins was different only because of the weather. A late spring sun poured through the cafe's windows, casting the entire space in a warm, golden haze. Maya sat with her back to the wall, her hands wrapped around a cooling mug. She was staring at a single, trembling flame on a small candle she'd brought with her, a private ritual for Leo, when a blur of movement caught her peripheral vision. Three little girls, maybe 5 or 6 years old, had been seated with their father at the table next to hers. They were a vision of coordinated chaos, identical blonde curls, matching red dresses with white collars, and an energy that seemed to vibrate through the floorboards. Maya had noted them absently, a splash of color in her grayscale world. Then she saw their hands. They were not fidgeting. They were talking to each other in American Sign Language. The signs were childish, a little sloppy, but unmistakable. Juice, cookie. My turn, Maya watched, a professional detachment at first. It was rare to see hearing children so young signing fluently. Statistics flooded her mind, the kind she'd researched bitterly after Leo's diagnosis. Over 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents. Early access to sign language is critical, yet fiercely debated. These girls were the exception. Then the smallest one, a girl with a smudge of chocolate on her cheek, turned and looked directly at Maya. Not at her face, but at her hands. Maya realized her own hands were moving unconsciously, tracing the sign for son over her heart, a habit she couldn't break. The little girl's eyes widened. She tapped her sister's arm and pointed. In the hearing world, this might have been rude. In the silent, visual world of sign, it was simply observation. The triplets conferred in a rapid flurry of signs Maya couldn't fully catch. Their father was distracted, typing furiously on his laptop, a man in his late 30s with dark brown hair and a tired slope to his shoulders. Then they did the unthinkable. In unison, they slid from their chairs and walked the 3 steps to Maya's table. They formed a small, solemn semicircle in front of her. The middle girl, who seemed the spokesperson, lifted her hands. "You are sad," she signed. The clarity of the statement in the language of her soul hit Maya like a physical blow. Tears, never far from the surface, welled instantly. She nodded, her own hands trembling too much to form a reply. The girl studied her face, her own expression one of deep, childish empathy. "Where is your baby?" she signed next. The question was a dagger twisting in a wound that had never closed. Maya's breath hitched. She forced her hands to move. "Gone," she signed back, the single sign final and awful. The triplets absorbed this. They looked at each other, a silent conversation passing between them. Their father, still oblivious, took a sip of his coffee. Then the boldest one, the first who had noticed Maya, stepped forward. Her small face was set with a devastating seriousness. She signed 4 simple words: "We can be your kids." The air left Maya's lungs. The cafe's golden light seemed to pulse. It was an offer of such pure, illogical, childish compassion that it bypassed every defense she'd built over 8 months. It wasn't about replacement. It was about connection. It was about filling a silence with the only language that made sense to her. A sob broke from Maya's throat, a raw, guttural sound she couldn't hear but felt tear through her chest. Tears streamed down her face as she lifted her hands, signing "thank you" over and over again, the movement messy with emotion. It was at that exact moment their father finally looked up. He saw his daughters gathered around a weeping stranger. He saw Maya's hands flying in signs of gratitude and grief. His own face transformed, from distracted work fatigue to confusion, then to dawning, heart-stopping comprehension. His hand flew to his mouth, his eyes wide with a shock that mirrored the emotional earthquake happening just feet away from him. The carefully ordered world of his cafe workday had just shattered, and he had no idea why, or that the reason was quietly breaking apart at the next table. For 5 long seconds, Ben, the father of the triplets, just stared. His mind was trying to process the scene: his daughters, a distraught stranger, and a silent conversation that had clearly leveled the woman before him. Then, fatherly instinct overrode shock. He stood up so quickly his chair scraped loudly on the floor, finally drawing the attention of other cafe patrons. "Girls," he said, his voice firmer than he felt, "come back to the table, please." The triplets, Chloe, Sophia, and Emma, looked at him, then back at Maya, whose tears were still flowing silently. They seemed to understand the gravity they'd stumbled into. With small, reluctant steps, they retreated to their chairs. Ben approached Maya's table slowly, his hands held slightly open in a universal gesture of non-threat. "I am so sorry," he began, his words deliberate, making sure to face her directly. They don't have a filter. Are you okay?" Maya wiped her cheeks with the heels of her palms, composing herself with visible effort. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small notepad and pen, and wrote with trembling hands, "I am deaf. It's okay." They were kind. Ben read the note, and a new layer of understanding and panic washed over him. The signing, of course. He knelt down beside her table, putting himself at her eye level, a gesture of respect he didn't even have to think about. "They signed because their mother was deaf," he said, still speaking clearly, knowing she might read his lips. "My wife, Anna." Maya's breath caught. She wrote again, "was." Ben's own eyes glistened. He nodded, the simple movement heavy with a shared vocabulary of loss. "She passed away, a year and a half ago, car accident." The words were still sandpaper in his throat. The girls, they were 4. Signing was their first language. It's how they remember her, how they stay connected to her. This changed everything. The random, heartbreaking offer from the girls wasn't random at all. It was born from their own profound loss. They recognized a fellow traveler in grief, a person speaking the sacred language of their lost mother. Maya's professional detachment shattered completely. She wasn't just witnessing an anomaly, she was being pulled into the center of a mirror tragedy. She wrote, her handwriting growing steadier. "My son Leo, he was 4 months, 8 months ago. I am so sorry for your loss." They sat there in the buzzing cafe, two strangers anchored by unimaginable grief, communicating through scribbled notes and broken lip reading. Ben explained he was a freelance architectural consultant, which was why he could be here on a Tuesday with 3 kids. He was drowning, trying to meet deadlines while raising triplets who missed their mother every second of every day. The girls, now sipping their juices under strict orders to stay put, kept sneaking glances at Maya. Chloe, the bold one who'd made the offer, signed a small, secret asterisk, hello, when she thought her dad wasn't looking. Maya signed back, a gentle hello, thank you. Ben saw the exchange, and instead of worry, he felt a pang of something else, hope. It was dangerous, fragile. But for the first time in 18 months, his girls were engaging with someone new in their mother's language without fear. They haven't signed with anyone outside the family since Anna died, Ben murmured, more to himself than to Maya. He made a decision. Would it be okay if I gave you my number? Maybe if you're willing, you could, I don't know, have tea with them sometime. They clearly. He gestured helplessly at his daughters, whose big eyes were fixed on Maya with unabashed fascination. Maya felt the walls around her heart, walls built of isolation and protective silence, tremble. This was madness, to invite more potential loss into her life, to connect with children when her own child was gone. Yet, their silent offer had been the first thing to pierce the numbness in months. She nodded slowly and handed him her notepad. He wrote his name, Ben Carter, and his number. As they parted ways, Ben herding his trio of red dresses toward the door, Maya folding the note with Ben's number into her palm, neither of them noticed a woman at the counter watching them intently. She was a regular, a busybody named Linda who preferred drama to her dreary latte. She'd seen the crying, the kneeling man, the frantic note writing. She'd seen the little girls looking upset. Her mind, primed for the worst, began weaving a story. The next day, Maya stared at her phone. The notepad with Ben's number sat on her kitchen table like a live wire. The rational part of her screamed to throw it away. The part of her that remembered the feeling of small, understanding eyes upon her, that part won. She sent a simple text. This is Maya from the cafe. I would like to see the girls again if it's still okay. The reply was almost immediate. They haven't stopped talking about you. Would you like to come to the park tomorrow? We'll be there at 3. The park, a place Maya had avoided since Leo's death. The sound of children's laughter she couldn't hear was somehow more haunting than silence. She agreed. Washington Square Park was a symphony of life Maya experienced as a vibrant, silent film. Children chased bubbles, couples lounged on blankets, and the old stone arch stood sentinel. Ben was easy to spot, sitting on a bench looking simultaneously relieved and overwhelmed as the triplets swarmed a nearby playground. When Maya approached, Chloe spotted her first. The little girl's face lit up. She scrambled down the slide and ran over, not stopping until she wrapped her arms around Maya's legs in a fierce, silent hug. The other two followed, a soft barrage of small, warm bodies. Ben's smile was tired but genuine. You're a rock star, he signed slowly, mouthing the words as he did. He was rusty but trying. For an hour, Maya sat on the bench with Ben, and the girls flitted between the playground and her side, signing little stories about the bugs they found or the colors of the slides. They taught her their sign names. Chloe was a C tapped on the chin. Sophia and C swirled near the heart. Emma and E wiggled by the ear like a laugh. Maya, in turn, showed them the sign name she'd made for Leo. An L gently rocked in the crook of her arm like cradling a baby. It was the most peaceful hour Ben had experienced in a year. For Maya, it was the first time she'd been around children without feeling like she was drowning. The communication was direct, visual, and pure. There was no need to explain her grief to them. They just knew it, the same way they knew the sky was blue. As the sun began to dip, Ben grew serious. There's something I need to tell you, he said, switching to speech and careful lip movement for a more complex topic. My in-laws, Anna's parents, they're a big part of the girls' lives. They're hearing, but they learned sign for Anna. They're traditional and protective. They weren't thrilled about me meeting someone new. Maya frowned, but we're not asterisk, she started to write. I know, Ben interrupted gently. But to them, you're a stranger, a deaf stranger connecting with their granddaughters right after they lost their deaf mother. They think it's confusing for the girls. They think I'm being reckless with the girls' emotional recovery. He ran a hand through his hair. They have a weekly video call with the girls every Sunday, tomorrow, and they've asked, well, demanded to meet you on the call. The outside world was crashing in. What had felt like a fragile, private connection was now under scrutiny. Maya felt a familiar urge to retreat, but she looked at Chloe, who was carefully placing dandelions in her hair, and she knew she couldn't. She wrote just one word, okay. Sunday arrived with a knot of anxiety in Maya's stomach. She joined Ben and the girls in their cozy, toy-strewn living room. The laptop was open on the coffee table. When the call connected, two stern, well-dressed faces filled the screen, Alina and Robert, Anna's parents. The greetings were polite but icy. Alina's eyes scanned Maya, missing nothing. They made small talk about the weather, the girls chattering happily in sign about their new friend Maya. Then, Alina leaned forward. Ms. Maya, we understand you recently lost a child, Alina said, her tone not unkind but clinically direct. That is a profound tragedy. Our concern is that our granddaughters, who are still processing the loss of their mother, are being exposed to another grief narrative. It seems a lot for little hearts to hold. Can you understand our position? The question hung in the digital air. Ben looked tense. Maya picked up the laptop, turning it so the camera was fully on her. She took a deep breath and began to sign. Ben translated aloud for his in-laws, his voice steady. I understand protecting them, Maya signed. But your granddaughters are not just holding my grief. They are sharing their language. They offered me a connection when I was alone in silence. They did that, not me. They saw a need and reached out in the way their mother taught them. Isn't that what you would want Anna's legacy to be? Not isolation, but connection. There was a long silence on the other end of the call. Robert cleared his throat. You sign very well, he said, a begrudging note of respect in his voice. It is my first language, Maya signed simply. It is how I live and how I grieve. With them, I don't have to translate. The dynamic in the room shifted. The girls, sensing the tension, climbed onto the couch beside Maya, leaning into her. Chloe, unprompted, signed to the screen, "We love Maya, she understands." It was a child's blunt truth, disarming in its simplicity. Alina's stern expression softened just a fraction. "We would like to get to know you better, Maya," she said finally. "Perhaps a dinner the next time we are in town." It was a ceasefire, not a surrender, but it was enough. After the call ended, Ben let out a huge sigh. "You were amazing," he said. But as Maya walked home that evening, the temporary victory faded, replaced by a deeper unease. She was getting attached. The girls were weaving themselves into the fabric of her days. The fear of another loss was paralyzing. She decided with a heavy heart that she needed to pull back, for her own survival. She sent Ben a text the next morning. "I need some space. This is moving too fast for me, I'm sorry." Ben's reply was a single, heartbreaking line. "They've been asking for you all morning." Maya turned off her phone, the coward's way out. She tried to return to her old routines, but the silence in her apartment was no longer peaceful. It was accusing. She had tasted connection again, and its absence was a new kind of torment. 3 days later, her doorbell rang. A flashing light system alerted her. She wasn't expecting anyone. Cautiously, she peered through the peephole. Ben stood there alone, his face etched with a desperate urgency. In his hands, he held a large, worn, leather-bound book. He wasn't here to plead or argue. He looked like a man who had discovered a secret that changed everything. Before she could decide whether to open the door, he held the book up to the peephole, open to a specific page. It was a photograph. A much younger Anna, Ben's late wife, beaming at the camera, her arms around another young woman. The other woman was also signing, a laugh frozen on her face. The other woman was Maya's older sister, Clara, a sister she hadn't seen or spoken to in over 10 years, after a bitter fallout over family pressures and Clara's choice to leave their deaf community for a hearing world. A sister who had never even known about Leo. Ben's voice was muffled but clear through the door. "Maya," he said, each word a hammer blow. "Anna and Clara, they were roommates. At Gallaudet University, they were best friends." Maya stumbled back from the door as if struck. Her mind, already reeling, tried to process the impossible image Ben held. Clara, her Clara, smiling beside Anna, Ben's Anna, in a photograph that was at least a dozen years old. The lock clicked open under her numb fingers. Ben stepped inside, the photo album held like a sacred text. "I found it last night," he said, his voice hushed in the quiet apartment. "After you texted, I was packing up some of Anna's old boxes from the attic, things her parents brought over. I found this." He opened the album on her kitchen table, pointing to more photos. There they were, Clara and Anna, arms slung around each other at college parties, studying in the library, making silly faces at the camera. In one, they were wearing matching t-shirts from a deaf cultural festival. "They were inseparable," Ben said, tracing Anna's face in a photo. Clara was the outgoing one. Anna was quieter, more studious. Clara brought her out of her shell. They were roommates for 3 years. Maya sank into a chair, her hands fluttering, unable to form a coherent sign. "How?" she finally managed. "Why didn't she ever tell me?" Ben sat opposite her. Anna mentioned Clara had a falling out with her family. She said it was painful. Clara cut ties. Anna respected that. She never pushed for details. He looked at Maya, his eyes searching. "When you told me your name was Maya Lawson, it clicked. Anna talked about her friend Clara Lawson. I thought it was a coincidence, but then I saw this." He turned a page. There was a formal photo, a graduation picture. 2 families stood proudly behind their daughters. On one side, a younger Alina and Robert beaming beside Anna. On the other side, Maya's breath hitched. Her own parents. Her mother's face, younger, smiling. A wave of vertigo washed over her. Her past and Ben's past were not just connected, they were intertwined. They knew each other, Maya signed, shock giving way to a slow, burning anger. "Our families stood together, and no one ever said a word." "They lost touch after graduation," Ben explained gently. "Anna and Clara promised to stay close, but life happened. I met Anna a few years later. Clara was already gone. From Anna's life, I mean. It was a sore spot. Anna felt like she failed her." The revelation was a seismic crack in Maya's understanding of her own history. Her estrangement from Clara had been painted as a clean break, a disagreement about assimilation into the hearing world. But now it seemed layered with unspoken alliances and abandoned friendships. Had Clara chosen Anna's family over her own? Had their parents taken sides? Then Ben turned to the very last page of the album. It wasn't a photo, but a sealed, faded envelope tucked into the back cover. Anna's elegant handwriting graced the front. It read, "For Clara, if you ever need me." "I haven't opened it," Ben said, his voice thick. "It's not mine, but I think it might be yours now, or Clara." Maya took the envelope. It felt heavy with decades of unsaid words. The coincidence of the cafe meeting was no longer a coincidence. It felt like fate, or a ghost, pulling threads together. She looked at Ben, the father of the triplets who had been taught to sign by a woman who was best friends with the sister she hadn't spoken to in 10 years. The girls weren't just random children offering comfort. They were living bridges to her own fractured history. "I have to find her," Maya signed, the decision solidifying as her hands moved. "I have to find Clara." Ben nodded. "I'll help, but Maya, there's something else." He hesitated, the worry lines on his forehead deepening. "The woman from the cafe, Linda, she posted something online." He pulled out his phone and showed Maya a local community Facebook group. The post was from Linda, the busybody. It had a blurry, zoomed-in photo of Maya crying at the cafe table with Ben kneeling beside her. The caption read, Disturbing scene at the daily grind today. This man and his 3 little girls were involved with this distressed woman. Does anyone know what's going on? Should we be concerned for the children? The comment section was a wildfire, over 200 comments. Some were sympathetic, recognizing grief. Many were not. He looks guilty as sin, one comment read. Those poor girls, what are they being exposed to? That woman looks unstable. Someone should call CPS. I've seen that guy with the triplets before. Always looks overwhelmed. Maybe he's in over his head. Ben's face was pale. It went up yesterday. I just saw it this morning. My neighbor texted me the link. He scrolled down. Someone already tagged the local Moms for Safety group. They're organizing. They want to check on the well-being of the girls. This was the wait, it gets worse moment. A private, profound human connection was being weaponized by public speculation. The girls' innocent offer born of their own loss was being twisted into a narrative of suspicion and danger. Ben, a widower doing his best, was being painted as a negligent father. Maya, a grieving mother, was being framed as a destabilizing influence. The fragile understanding she'd reached with Alina and Robert was about to be incinerated by internet gossip. We have to fix this, Maya signed, her movements sharp with anger. We have to tell the truth. What is the truth, Maya? Ben asked, exhausted. That our dead loved ones were best friends. That my girls signed to you because they saw their mother in your grief. The internet doesn't want that truth. It wants drama. Just then Ben's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his face fell. It's Alina, he answered, putting it on speaker. Benjamin, Alina's voice was razor-sharp even through the phone. What in God's name is happening? I have 3 friends from the city sending me this filth on Facebook. Who is this woman? What is she doing with our granddaughters? Alina, it's not what it looks like, Ben began, but he was cut off. It looks like a circus. It looks like you're parading our granddaughters in front of some emotional wreck for everyone to see. We agreed to dinner, Benjamin, not a public spectacle. We are on our way. We'll be there in 2 hours, and that woman had better be gone. The line went dead. The room was silent. The pressure was now a physical weight. The girls' well-being, Ben's custody, Maya's reputation, and the fragile new connection between them were all under threat from a perfect storm of misunderstanding and malice. Maya stood up, a new resolve hardening her features. She pointed to the Facebook post, then to the photo album, then to herself. No asterisk, she signed. I will not be gone. They want to see the truth. We will show them, all of them. Ben looked at her, scared but intrigued. How? Maya picked up her own phone and began typing rapidly. She showed him the screen. She was drafting a post, not for a private group, but for her own public profile. A profile she never used. My name is Maya Lawson, asterisk, she wrote. I am deaf. 8 months ago, my son Leo died. Last week in a cafe, 3 incredible little girls saw my pain. They spoke to me in sign language, the language of my heart, and offered me kindness I will never forget. Their father, Ben, is a widower raising them alone. Their mother, Anna, was beloved. We are not a scandal. We are 2 families bound by loss, finding light in each other. This is our story, and we will not let fear write it for us. She attached the one photo she had, a selfie from the park with the triplets hanging off her shoulders, all of them making silly signs, genuine joy on their faces. Are you sure? Ben asked. Putting yourself out there, it's a floodgate. The gate is already open, Maya signed. We can either drown in what pours in or we can steer the water. She hit post. The reaction was immediate, but not what the gossipers expected. Her post was shared by deaf community groups, by parenting blogs focused on loss, by organizations supporting single fathers. The narrative flipped. Comments of support poured in. This is beautiful. Thank you for sharing your strength. Those girls are angels. But the counterattack from the Moms for Safety group was swift. They accused Maya of exploiting children for sympathy. They questioned Ben's judgment more vehemently. A new, more sinister thread emerged. speculation that Maya, as a deaf woman, might not be a fit influence for hearing children. The prejudice was barely veiled. As this online war escalated, the doorbell flashed again. Eleanor and Robert had made good time. They stood on the doorstep, their expressions storms of righteous anger. But as they entered, their eyes fell on the open photo album on the table, on the picture of their daughter Anna with her best friend. Eleanor's hand flew to her mouth. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "Anna's memory box," Ben said quietly. "Eleanor, Robert, this is Maya Lawson, Clara Lawson's sister." The air left the room. The grandparents' anger dissolved into stunned confusion, then dawning, painful recognition. The past had just walked into the present, holding the hands of three little girls. Eleanor looked from the photo to Maya, really looked at her for the first time. The resemblance to Clara was unmistakable around the eyes. "Clara's sister," she repeated, the fight gone from her voice. "Anna's Clara." In that moment of stunned silence, Ben's phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced at it, and his face went ashen. He showed Maya the screen. It was a direct message from a profile with no picture. "Stop the posts, or everyone finds out what really happened to Anna. You don't want that for your girls, do you?" The safe, personal world of grief and connection had just vanished. They were no longer just fighting gossip. They were being threatened. And the threat was aimed at the most sacred memory of all, Anna herself. Someone didn't just want them to be quiet. Someone wanted to bury the past and was willing to use the girls as leverage to do it. The battle for their story had just turned into a war for the truth itself. The anonymous threat hung in the air like a poison gas, freezing everyone in the room. All other conflicts, the online drama, the grandparents' anger, shriveled into insignificance. Someone out there was willing to weaponize Anna's memory. Ben was the first to move. He grabbed his phone, his fingers flying as he typed a reply to the anonymous account. "Who is this? What are you talking about?" The reply was instantaneous. "The accident wasn't an accident. Ask your new girlfriend's family. Now delete every post, or the girls learn mommy was a liar." Eleanor let out a sharp gasp. Robert's face turned to stone. That's monstrous," he breathed. Maya's mind raced. What does my family have to do with Anna's death? She held up the unopened letter from Anna to Clara. "We need to know what this says. Now." With solemn, unanimous silence, Ben slit the envelope open. He unfolded a letter, handwritten in Anna's looping script. He began to read it aloud, his voice trembling. "Dear Clara, my best friend, if you're reading this, something has happened to me. Don't be sad. Well, be a little sad, but mostly be angry, and then be brave." The letter was not a sentimental farewell. It was a confession and a warning. Anna wrote that in their final year at Gallaudet, she had uncovered a fraud scheme within a student organization they both volunteered for. A hearing administrator was siphoning grant money meant for deaf outreach programs. Clara, fierce and justice-driven, had wanted to go to the press immediately. Anna, more cautious, worried about backlash from the powerful hearing board members. "You were right, Clara," Ben read on. "I should have listened. I told my parents. I thought they'd help. They told me to drop it. They said making waves would hurt my future, our family's reputation. They made me promise to stay quiet. I think they even warned the administrator. I've always wondered if that's why you left. Did you find out I told them? Did you think I betrayed you?" Eleanor sank onto the couch, her face pale. "She told us there was a problem with a teacher," she whispered. "We told her it wasn't her fight. We were protecting her." Anna's letter concluded with a powerful directive. "If I'm gone and it's not old age, look into it. The man's name is Gerald Miller. He's a predator on our community. I have proof in a blue flash drive taped behind my old desk in our dorm room. Room 408. I was too scared to use it. Don't you be. Love forever, Anna." The room was silent, the weight of the past crushing them. The accident that killed Anna, a late-night hit-and-run with no witnesses, now glowed with sinister possibility. Gerald Miller, Robert said, the name tasting like ash. He's on the board of the community center. He donated to the scholarship set up in Anna's name. The pieces were assembling into a horrifying picture. The anonymous threat wasn't from a random internet troll. It was from someone connected to that old crime, someone terrified that the connection between Maya and Ben would stir up the past. They knew about Clara. They knew about Anna's letter. They were watching. Maya stood up, a fierce light in her eyes. She signed with definitive clarity, "We are not deleting anything. We are posting this, all of it." Ben looked at her, then at his daughters sleeping soundly in the next room. "It could put them in danger," he said, the fear a living thing in his voice. "They are already in danger," Maya signed back. "From lies. The truth is the only thing that will protect them now. Anna was brave enough to write this down. We have to be brave enough to share it." With Alina and Robert's grim, tearful nod of assent, they crafted a new post. This time, they didn't just tell a story. They presented evidence. They photographed Anna's letter, blurring only the flash drive's location. They named Gerald Miller and the old fraud. They explained the anonymous threat. They framed it not as an accusation, but as a question. Who is trying to silence Anna's voice from beyond the grave, and why? They posted it and waited for the world to explode. It did, but not in the way they feared. The deaf community online mobilized with breathtaking speed. Gerald Miller was identified, his current position at a large nonprofit exposed. Former classmates of Anna and Clara came forward with their own suspicions. Investigative journalists from major outlets picked up the story. The police, seeing the viral post and the direct threat, reopened the cold case file on Anna's hit and run. The Moms for Safety group dissolved into apologies and deleted posts. The narrative was now undeniable. This was a story of love, legacy, and a long-delayed fight for justice. In the midst of this maelstrom, a new email arrived in Maya's inbox. The subject line was simple: Room 408. It was from Clara. The email contained no greeting, just a sentence: "The flash drive is with me. I've had it for 10 years. Meet me at our spot. Tomorrow noon." Our spot was the old botanical garden greenhouse where they'd played as children, a place of silent, humid beauty. Maya went alone. Sitting on a familiar mossy bench was her sister, older, wearier, but unmistakably Clara. They looked at each other across a decade of silence. Clara spoke first, her signs fluent and sharp with old pain. "I knew you'd find her, or she'd find you. The universe doesn't like unfinished business." The story Clara told filled the final gaps. She had discovered Anna had told her parents about the fraud. Feeling betrayed, she'd cut ties with everyone, her family, Anna in a blaze of youthful anger. But a year after graduation, guilt-ridden, she'd gone back to their old dorm during a reunion. She found the flash drive. By then, Gerald Miller was powerful and litigious. Clara, alone and scared, kept it as a secret insurance policy. When Anna died, she was consumed with guilt, convinced that if she'd acted sooner, her friend might still be alive. She saw Maya's posts, saw the photo of the triplets, and knew the past had finally circled back. "I'm sorry," Clara signed, tears finally falling. "About Leo, about everything. I was a terrible sister." Maya reached out and took her sister's hands. The anger was gone, washed away in the shared river of loss for Anna and for Leo. "You were in pain," she signed. "So was I, we all were." Together, they handed the flash drive to the detectives. The evidence was damning: emails, forged invoices. It also contained a personal audio log from Anna, describing her fear of Miller and her disappointment in her parents. Within a week, Gerald Miller was arrested for financial crimes. The reopening of Anna's case, now with new motive, led to a breakthrough. A former associate of Miller's, seeking a plea deal, confessed to driving the car that hit her. Justice, delayed for years, finally arrived. The public storm began to subside, leaving behind a profound quiet. One evening, Ben and Maya sat with Alina and Robert in the peaceful living room. The girls were drawing at the coffee table. Elinor spoke, her voice soft with a hard-won humility. "We failed, Anna. We chose reputation over truth. We will spend the rest of our lives making that right." She looked at Maya. "You and Clara, you gave us a second chance to be brave for her. Thank you." The relationship transformed from one of suspicion to one of shared, devoted guardianship of Anna's memory and her daughter's. Weeks later, on a bright Sunday morning, Maya found herself back at the daily grind. This time, she was not alone. Ben and the triplets were with her. They took the same corner table. The girls, with the unerring instinct of children, had brought a gift for Maya. It was a small, hand-painted flower pot with a single succulent growing in it. Chloe, the spokesperson, signed, "It's a friendship plant. It doesn't need much talking to grow, just light." Maya felt the truth of it in her soul. Her grief for Leo was still there, a permanent stone in her heart, but it was no longer the entirety of her landscape. Around it now grew new life, connection to these vibrant girls, a rebuilt bridge to her sister, an unexpected partnership with Ben, and a solemn bond with Anna's parents. The silence was no longer a prison. It was a space where understanding, when it came, was deep and clear. As they sat there, a woman approached their table. It was Linda, the busybody whose post had started the public chaos. She wrung her hands, her face flushed with shame. I don't expect forgiveness," she stammered, "but I wanted to apologize in person. I judged a moment I didn't understand. I've donated to the scholarship fund in Anna's name. I'm so sorry." Ben simply nodded, a quiet acceptance. After she left, he looked at Maya and signed, a small smile on his face. "The water is steering itself." The final surprising detail emerged subtly, in the way life often does. As Maya helped the girls with their crayons, she noticed a pattern in their drawings they'd been making for weeks. Among the suns and houses and animals, they always drew 4 figures, 3 small ones and 1 tall one. That day, Sophia added a new element. Above the 4 figures, she carefully drew a tiny, smiling baby with a halo of light and a beautiful woman with wings, holding the baby's hand. She pointed to the woman, then to her heart, the sign for Mom. Then she pointed to the baby and to Maya. They had woven Leo and Anna into their family portrait, not as replacements but as guardians. A silent, profound acknowledgement that love and family is not limited by the living or the dead, but defined by the heart. Maya pulled all 3 girls into a tight, silent hug. She had walked into that cafe trapped in a silence of grief. She was walking out surrounded by a silence filled with meaning, with memory, and with a future she never dared to imagine. The journey from that first heartbreaking offer to this moment of wholeness was complete. The story of the bereaved deaf mother and the 3 signing girls was no longer a story of loss, but a testament to the unexpected, healing power of connection found in the quietest of places. Maya's journey shows us that the deepest silences are not always empty. Sometimes, they are waiting to be filled with a language we forgot we knew. What began as a story of solitary grief became a testament to how connections form in the most fractured places, not by erasing the past, but by building a new future around it. We live in a world that often mistakes quiet for emptiness and difference for distance. A deaf mother's grief was invisible to a hearing world, until 3 little girls looked past the silence and saw the person within. They didn't offer solutions. They offered presence. And in that simple, profound act, they set in motion a healing that would mend not 1 broken family, but 2. This story asks us a difficult but essential question. How many people around us are trapped in their own kind of silence? Not just the silence of deafness, but the silence of loss, of shame, of a pain they believe is untranslatable. And what would happen if we had the courage, like those children, to reach out in the language they understand, whether it's a sign, a gesture, or simply the willingness to listen without judgment? Maya, Ben, Clara, and the triplets remind us that families are not just born. They are built from fragments of shared history, from choices of courage over fear, and from the stubborn belief that no one should have to grieve alone. The most powerful bridges are often built by the smallest hands. So, what's your story? Have you ever been surprised by an offer of kindness when you needed it most, or found yourself making a connection that defied all logic and expectation? Maybe you've been the one to extend that hand across a silence. Share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might be the very thing someone else needs to hear. If this journey of healing and unexpected connection resonated with you, please show your support. Like this video to help these important stories reach more people. Share it with a friend who might need a reminder that hope can arrive in the most unexpected forms. And subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss a story that proves the human heart is the most powerful translator of all. Thanks for watching, and remember, the next time you encounter a silence, listen a little closer. You might just hear a whole world waiting to speak.